Hello, welcome to Talking Rubbish, a weekly podcast delving deep into the world of recycling and discussing the truth behind snappy headlines and one-sided stories. I'm James Piper, author of The Rubbish Book, and I'm joined by Robbie Staniforth, my far from rubbish friend, and Nick Torday, our far from rubbish guest. Hi, Nick.
Hi, guys. Hi, I'm here too.
Hi, Robbie. You're a bit further away from the mic this time. We've all sort of come into one room, which is great, but we haven't.
Nice.
It's really nice, but we haven't been able to do that before. So we're just all leaning into the mics.
Yeah, I think sitting on your lap wasn't really an option. So we're going to be moving back and forth. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
So here we are with our second interview, which is episode 10. I think we said we'd try and pencil them in every 5 episodes. And so far we've stuck to that, which is great. We have some really amazing guests lined up for the future. Robbie and I are in the same room. Last time I did the interview on my own, and let me tell you, the backlash on YouTube, you just would not believe it. We had someone comment going, #bring back Baldy. And he's back. Back with a freshly shaved head. So, bring back Baldy is official. That is, we needed Robbie to be here for the interview. So I'm so delighted that the three of us are in the same room and we're able to have this conversation. So no more bring back Baldy. I was slightly devastated because this guy also said, I enjoy him because he's the funny one. And someone had said to me, which of you is the funny one and which of you is the serious one on the podcast? And I honestly thought I was the funny one. So it was like absolutely devastating to be put in my place by YouTube. So I will be the serious one and Baldy over here could be the funny one.
Not quite sure who wants to bring back Baldy, but Baldy is here with a vengeance. Looking forward to it. So Nick, we met each other a few years ago through a mutual acquaintance. And I remember at the time, you were looking at new business ideas. The issue of, I think Blue Planet had just come out. The issue of plastics in the ocean was huge. And you were deciding around a new startup business that has eventually become the Bauer Collective. So do you want to just tell us a bit of a story about how Bauer Collective started?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. You're right. You and I did meet really early doors, and we've always been, hugely grateful for the advice and support you've given us. So the story goes back a little bit further, and I was just saying to James when we met that I used to run a tech business just around the corner from here in Bristol, and as a business, we did a lot of work in the social and environmental impact space. So our clients were people like the UN, WWF, Greenpeace, as well as big blue chip corporates who were trying to develop their ESG agenda, etc. Going back now about, I'd say 8 years, maybe 9 years, we built with one of the big global NGOs, the first ever data visualized model of marine plastic waste. What we all now understand to be the great the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, etc., was still sort of fairly nebulous and opaque back in those days. And we built this data model with this organization, and it absolutely blew my mind. This was before the issue of existential plastic waste in the natural environment was kind of headline news every day or every week. That began a process for me as a consumer of trying to live differently. I've got a family, I've got 3 kids, and we were, there's a lot of stuff comes out of the house. So as I started to dig into how do we eliminate waste coming out of our home, how do we interact with products and services in a different way, I discovered a number of things. One was, it was a very fragmented consumer ecosystem. So you had to sort of shop around to lots of different places to get your sort of bamboo toothbrush here and your plastic-free laundry detergent tablets here or whatever it was. So that was sort of number one. Number two was the product quality was often a compromise. Like back then, sustainable, natural, eco products. There were still questions around sort of product delight and efficacy, these really important things that you want to have products in your home. But the third thing critically was the process for reuse and refill was super cumbersome. So this was in the day, and I live in rural Somerset. I now live in South Somerset. At the time, I lived in North Somerset. But we had a bricks and mortar refill store, like a 6-mile journey. So you had to get in the car with a tote bag full of Vettels, go to the refill store, work out which dispenser is which. Now, this is not me being down on refill stores. I'm obviously a massive proponent of all things reuse and refill. But in terms of the customer experience, it was full of friction. And so these were my sort of 3 core hypotheses that were kicking around in my head. Like, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And there's enormous latent consumer demand to address this problem. So that's kind of the foundational hypotheses that were going around in my head, that there was a big problem that needed to be addressed here.
Great. And it's funny, we've just we've put out our refill episode, I think episode 6, and I like to put a photo up on social media, and I put up a photo that I went into Preserve, the refill store that we have in Bristol, and I asked whether I could take a photo or not. And it was quite interesting because they were instantly like, well, are you doing something bad about refill? Are you being negative? And I was like, no, like, I like refill and I want to talk about it, and we've got this podcast. And eventually they let me take a photo, and then the lady in the shop said, so do you shop here regularly then? And I was like, this is actually my second time in the store, which I felt really guilty about, and she was going, but you do an eco podcast. And I was thinking, yeah, I know, what's my barrier here?
Yeah.
And I think, I'm just being super honest here, but I'm like, this shop is it is actually the closest shop to my house. I have to walk past it to get to Tesco and Co-op. And I still struggle because I know I haven't brought with me my packaging. And, they will provide a paper bag or packaging. But then I'm thinking, but if I forget it next time, I've now got more packaging in my house than I wanted.
Yeah.
So it'd be worth you explaining how you've gone about solving that.
Yeah. So just to sort of continue the story, I guess, I then, went to my co-founder, Marcus, an old mate of mine. He'd built a very successful compostable packaging business for the food service industry, which he'd sold just recently to a business called Bunzl, who are a FTSE 100 packaging distributor. So he was looking for his next challenge. With my background in sort of technology, innovation, service design, his background in packaging and sort of environmental sustainable business, it just felt like a great team to address this challenge. So we then got our heads together and started to explore what a system might look like. And I was listening to a preview that Robbie kindly shared of your refill episode, which was talking about Loop. So Loop was a big deal when we were sort of first raising money for the business. And we all know it hasn't really panned out, at least not in the UK, but actually I believe still in France is performing quite well. But, for me, and just picking up, James, and what you were saying about the burden, the friction, the cognitive load for the consumer to go, I forgot I can't go in there because I've forgotten my vessel, my bottles, dispensers. And it's just like, I don't want to get more packaging, etc. So we were like, service design is critical to behavioral change, to making a system that works for people. I'll fast forward to explain how Bauer works, right? Is we use flexible packs. So they are the refill packs that you will see for on supermarket shelves now, for liquid consumer products. So we have a multi-category range across household and personal care. So we do 3 categories in household: dishwash, laundry and cleaning, 3 categories in personal care: hands, body and hair. So that's pretty much you're covered for all of your sort of liquid product needs across the household. And what happens is you'll order from Bauer Collective, and you'll either have your own vessels, dispensers, bottles at home, or you'll buy them. We have a full range of sort of custom Bauer dispensers. You'll buy them from us, and then you'll get your refill packs. You'll set up the cadence for your subscription. We're a subscription refill service. So 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever suits the needs of your household. The packs arrive, you extrude the product into the dispenser. And because they're a flexible pack, they pack completely flat. And we send you a prepaid returns envelope, and you simply slide the empty packaging, slots in neatly to that. It's a large letter format, so you don't have to go to a post office. You don't have to arrange a courier pickup. You just pop it in your local mailbox, which most people have access to within a reasonable, and also putting stuff in the post is like a regularized household behavior anyway. That packaging comes back to us. It's put through a QC process, and then we refill those packs with exactly the same product. It's all technology enabled. So we have a sort of custom scanning fill line in our refill center, circularity center, which is in Swindon. So we fill with product, we scan them into the system. We know exactly what batch coded product is in each individual pack. When they come back from the consumer, they're scanned back in. So we know exactly which packaging has come back, how many times it's been reused. When they're refilled with the next batch, that batch code is overwritten so that we have a full sort of audit trail of the pack. We conduct randomized microbiological testing to ensure the safety and security of the product inside. And the pack keeps going back out over and over again. So that's kind of at a high level how it's called Bauer Pack as well. That's what the technology is called. So that's how it works.
Amazing. And it really is incredible products. And you've actually brought some for us today, which is so kind.
Yeah,
so,
it's all pleasure.
What have we got today?
We have sent you our kitchen sink starter kit.
Nice. So like with Natalie's books, we will put that on our Instagram, which is @rubbishpodcast. And if you like and follow us there, then you'll be in with the chance of winning that. So that's just my quick social plug. It all sounds amazing what you do, Nick, and I'm fascinated by it. I've got loads of questions. I've actually got a difficult question that we haven't talked about, so I'm just going to check in with it and see whether you've thought this through. When I looked at this in the past, because companies like TerraCycle do waste by post, where you post things back to them and then they will recycle it. I had a look at the Royal Mail kind of rules, and they're not very happy about people posting waste. Is this something you've looked at and got agreement with, or how does that work? Well,
we're not posting waste. We're posting packaging for reuse. So it actually falls out of that consideration. We encourage our customers to screw the lid back onto the Bauer pack before they send it back in the post. So there's no leakage. Sometimes there might be a bit of spoil on the outside of the packaging, but it's in a sealed large letter format envelope. And we've actually built quite a good relationship with Royal Mail through other initiatives that we've been doing on. So we're actually looking to build a relationship with them long term for how we can leverage the mail network, because of course there's a huge carbon benefit as well to using the mail bag as opposed to individual couriers, or which has an enormous carbon impact, which of course was the thing about Loop that was just never going to be scalable, was these enormous tote boxes with heavyweight containers being picked up by motorcycle couriers. I mean, it's kind of bonkers when you look at it in retrospect. So no, that's not an issue, and we do have a proactive dialogue with Royal Mail around what we're doing.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, it was something I've looked at in the past, because there's often these schemes that pop up and people say, post us back this. And you look at it and it's very clear, because you need a waste carrier's license and there's all sorts of rules.
But it's not waste.
But it's not waste.
That is right? Because these are assets that are going to be back in production almost immediately. So we're sort of, like a lot of these things, James, we're sort of, there's loads of regulatory frameworks for whom we don't kind of fit into their buckets, because we're doing something which is still very nascent and new, that there aren't, like the BRC, the British Retail Consortium, do not have a definition for reuse. So we're kind of like pushing these boundaries and helping these organizations to build consideration for this new model.
And I suppose that's part of being the trailblazer. But as the policy guy, I've just got to come in very quickly to explain that waste is basically defined by the intention to discard it. So the intention when you put it in the bin that it is rubbish, and the intention when you're getting those posted back is not that it's rubbish, is that it's still a packaging format that is very clearly marked as able to be refilled again. So it's the fact that the individual who's posting it back does not have the intention to discard it as rubbish, which means they're not posting back rubbish through the mail system. Just thinking back to, so when we were first introduced, you were in that stage of trying to decide what was the business model you were going to create to try tackle this plastic crisis. And I remember you looking at lots of different options when we had those board meetings to decide, should it be this or should it be that? And you eventually effectively settled on becoming an actual retailer, an online retailer. And there were times when we were looking at, was it a packaging supply company or was it to build a system? But the first thing you did was to become a retailer. So I just wondered what the challenges were back then and exactly why you decided to hone in on the fact that you needed to actually retail the stuff yourself to get Refill off the ground.
Good question. Very good question. One that we get asked a lot by investors and other sort of, third parties. I think, and I'd say we're not really a retailer conventionally. We're a brand. We've built a brand, a sustainable consumer goods brand. I think we were more excited by that. As a founder, you want to be excited by the thing you're setting out to do. Marcus, my co-founder, as I said, had successfully built a B2B licensed biopackaging business, which he'd sold. So he'd kind of done that. And wanted a different challenge. And we also looked at the market and felt like the best possible chance of us validating this business model was to build the entire service, right? Because it's not just about the packaging. It's about the product, the customer experience, the entire end-to-end service. The general narrative around reuse and refill is quite negative. Right. And all these supermarket trials, and if something doesn't work and the trade press are all over it going, oh, there's been another failure. And I think we felt that rather than trying to intersect into these legacy linear supply models that the big retailers and brands have, we could build something from the ground up, the whole thing, the manufacturing, the reverse logistics, the packaging technology, the product. And that was super compelling and exciting to us. So that's why we went down that road. And I think that's when we talk about business, yes, reuse is central to it, but we are also developing our own product formulations. Like, I went from running a technology business to understanding how to develop shampoo fragrance. That's, again, for my own personal and professional development, that's super exciting to be broadening and expanding our horizons and developing a holistic brand, product and packaging proposition.
Yeah, so thinking back to those days of helping you on that sort of journey of building your business and deciding how the model would work, I look very fondly upon those days and also the 6 bottles of wine I remember you sending me for devoting some of my time, extracurricular time. I rember it was evening meetings
to declare
and stuff
like that.
It was not bribery.
HMRC are going to be knocking on the door.
So fast forwarding now to the customer journey that you took us through, just explain a little bit about how the technology actually works with refilling these pouches and stuff. Because people, as much as, lots of people just think that stuff goes into a black hole with waste and rubbish. It just sort of goes away and magically gets recycled. We're trying to shine a light with this podcast on how exactly recycling works. Tell us how exactly so the pouch comes to your site.
Yep.
What happens to that pouch in getting it back out and sent to a different customer?
Okay. So an envelope comes back. We encourage, for the unit economics to be optimized, we encourage customers to send back a minimum of 4 packs. Now, that's the average Bauer subscriber has 4.5 subscriptions. So that kind of tallies with the average number of subscriptions. So they might have washing up liquid, laundry liquid, body wash and hand wash, let's say. So we say, look, rather than sending them back one by one, just wait until, so there's a bit more of a lag on the packaging coming back, but we can tolerate that because the unit economics work better sending multiple packs back via Royal Mail. So they come back to our team in the refill center. We open the packs. At the moment, it's quite manual. And we are in the process of investing in some sort of automation strategy. But currently what happens is they get the packs out, they do a visual QC. So one thing I haven't talked about yet, which is like super important, and actually, James, we had an email exchange. One of the key innovations with BauerPack. So in the early days, we were washing the packaging between use cycles. Now, imagine washing a small, flexible pack with a 24 mil aperture, which has foaming surfactant-based products inside it.
Yeah, and this is why we had the email exchange, because I couldn't understand how you wash a pouch like that.
So back in the day in 2020, we worked with Miele, the global white goods.
Oh, the washing machine guys.
Yeah, the washing machine.
Oh,
guys.
okay, yeah. High quality washing machine. Wish I had one. Was using one on holiday just recently and thinking, bloody hell, these are good.
Yeah, they are good. Other washing machines are available. But Miele have got a R&D wash centre in Abingdon. So I was schlepping up to Abingdon with all of these Bauer packs. We were trying to wash them out, and it was like an Ibiza foam party, like these enormous industrial...
Sounds fun.
Yeah, well, without the fun. These enormous industrial washing machines were just like pouring out with foam. So we discovered very quickly that washing flexible packaging between use cycles was neither technically, environmentally, nor economically viable at any sort of scale. So at that point, we applied for a grant from Innovate UK, the sort of plastic packaging solution funding stream, which we won, which was great. And that enabled us to hire a guy who became our de facto head of packaging. He'd done 17 years at Procter & Gamble in packaging engineering. And our big thing was, how do we design out the needs? So Bauer packs now have a proprietary one-way valve system. So when we fill the pack, the filling nozzle comes into the pack, fills with product, comes out, and that valve snaps shut. Okay, and when it gets to the customer, you'll see when you get these packs, well, they're actually going to one of your listeners, not to you guys. But Robbie, you'll have probably interacted with the Bauer pack before. So you tip the pack.
My reuse story has made you feel that I haven't.
No, James, sorry.
I think that's
have you, James? Have you? I'm putting you on the spot now.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But I will be, because I have, it's obviously doing research. I'm in. It's interesting because I said on Natalie's interview that I was moving to refillable pods, and my friend came around last night and said, "You're not. There's no way you're going to do that. You just made that up for the podcast." And I'm like, I absolutely am. And this is the same thing. I'm going to get a Bauer subscription. So I'm literally like, every time we do an interview on our podcast, I just feel like my house is going to get incrementally better. And by the end of it, I'm going to be like the most refillable household in Bristol. Yeah. It's just going to take
the podcast is like your gateway.
Exactly. It's just going to take about 500 episodes before I've completed. So, but right now we're into refillable pods. I've just got to use up my old ones because it doesn't make any sense to get rid of those. Yes. And then I've got to use up, in fact, I know we need some hand wash. So Ellie will be listening to this and telling me,
you heard it here, listeners, live on air, commitment from James. So
I'm going to put photos up of all these things I've done.
So the one-way valve, effectively, when the customer extrudes that product into the dispenser and it's flat, no air or contaminants can get back into the pack unless they compromise it with a biro or whatever. So we conduct a visual QC to ensure that the pack is not compromised. There's no split seams. The valve hasn't been compromised. And then that goes straight back. It's SKU separated and it goes straight back into line to be refilled with the next batch of product.
And so when you say SKU separated, you mean you're making sure that the fabric conditioner only has fabric conditioner in the second time?
Yeah.
And what about flavors and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Scents, smells?
All of that.
Are they flavors?
Fragrances.
My mouth actually dropped open as you were saying that. I can't believe, so because we haven't prepped this. You just said in an email we're not washing them, and I just thought, oh my goodness, we're bringing a guy in who's about to tell me he recycles or landfills all these pouches. So you're telling me that the pouch has a valve that means that contaminant can't enter, and it means you are allowed to reuse that without washing it.
Yep,
that is phenomenal.
Yeah,
genuinely amazing.
And we conduct randomized microbiological testing. And the test results are fantastic. We are, because these are naturally antibacterial products.
So that is true, but that is true, yes. How often do you have to do these tests? How do you go? I just can't even imagine how you go about getting approval for something like that.
Well,
are you about to tell me you don't have approval?
I'm about to tell you, James, that in the startup world, the mantra is beg forgiveness, not permission. And as I said, people like the BRC, British Retail Consortium, they don't have a definition for reuse. So I think it's up to us to be confident that we are selling products to our customers that are safe to use. And we've got test data that proves that. So I can't give you the specifics of the randomized testing protocols that we run, but our head of MPD is a guy called Dr. Phil Bassendale. He's a PhD grad, ex-Reckitt Benckiser. So he did 7 years in innovation with one of the biggest CPG businesses in the world. So, we've got some pretty grown-up people running our system here. And, we are belt and braces confident that we're delivering a system, we're delivering products that are safe for consumers to use.
Yeah, as you say, they're naturally antibacterial, so you're going to have, as long as you don't get contamination in. That is, it's fascinating. I'm genuinely impressed by that.
And just going back to Robbie's question about fragrance variant, yes, we SKU separate. So we, for instance, we have 3 different laundry fragrances. I think that's right.
What are they? Putting you on the spot.
Okay. We just relaunched our laundry range, Robbie. So Orange Blossom and Bergamot, or Bergamot, I never know how to pronounce it. Lavender and Fresh Linen are our 3 laundry.
I'm a Fresh Linen guy. What are you, James?
Well, I was going to ask which one you would recommend for my first purchase.
I think the Orange Blossom and Bergamot is our new fragrance, and it's really nice. We hired a fragrance consultant from Method, Method are the cleaning brand who were acquired by Ecover and then sold to SC Johnson and are renowned for great fragrances. So she's been working with us on fragrance consultancy and really optimizing how good our products smell.
So shall I just summarize where I think we've got to, and you can tell me if I've got any of it wrong, because it's just good. There's a lot going on with this business model.
Going on, yeah.
So I am going to join, and I will order a starter kit, which is going to be for the kitchen, bathroom, or
laundry or whatever.
Laundry, yeah. Utility room. Mm-hmm. And that starter kit's going to come with a bottle and a pouch full of product.
Correct.
And I am going to...
a prepaid envelope for you to send the empty packaging.
prepaid envelope. And I am going to empty that pouch into that bottle and send the pouch back to you when I've got 4 of them.
Yep.
You have this valve.
Ideally.
Yeah, you have this valve that then removes the risk of contamination, so you can then refill and you will send that back to me when I need it or as part of the subscription.
Yeah, but it's asynchronous, right? So we're not sending, and some of our customers do get confused with this, we're not sending you the same packaging back. You're getting your new products on subscription.
Do they test you? Do they just put a little mark on it and go, I look forward to receiving this back?
Just some of our customers do be like, okay, but if I send it back to you, how long does it take for you to refill it and send it back to me? And we're no, we will just reuse and refill that pack, but you will get a filled pack. It may be a different pack. But the other thing, just going back to the technology side of it, Robbie asked about the QR code on the pack serves 2 functions. For us, the QR code allows us to do the batch tracking and the reuse cycles, and we've built our own proprietary data model. I can come on to carbon in a moment. But for the consumer, you, James, can scan the QR code on the pack and it'll tell you how many times that pack has been reused, how much plastic waste has been saved, and how much carbon has been saved. So it's got real-time impact data built into the packaging.
See, now I love tech and I'm going to have this all over my house. I'm going to just only buy products now that have QR codes that tell me how many times they've been used, and then I'll just have screens everywhere. But so how many cycles do you do on an average piece of packaging? Do you have limitations on that?
Yeah, the only limitation is the base stability shelf life of the product, which is on average 36 months. So it's really how many times we can reuse that pack within 3 years, which is roughly 10 times. And we conducted an independent LCA life cycle analysis, which shows that if we use the pack up to 10 times, that pack is 76% more carbon efficient than one single-use disposable bit of plastic packaging.
Okay. And one of the questions I have, just as I was talking through the process, is presumably you send the bottles empty.
Yes, we do.
Had you considered them being full when they're sent, so that the pouches are used for that first refill, or was that just not a practical?
Well, it's sort of part of the whole, getting into the refill thing. So you get your box, you open it by your kitchen sink, you line up your dispensers, you open them up, you empty the product in. We have looked at it. And actually, we're just expanding into physical retail at the moment. And we are now looking at pre-filled dispensers for the retail environment, where obviously it makes less sense to be buying an empty dispenser, although some bigger CPG brands are starting to sell empty bottles on shelf. The retail customer is not as used to that. But in the D2C environment, it actually is like part of the process of getting the stuff, filling up the dispensers, et cetera, et cetera.
Let's talk a little bit about those pouches, because it's something that we've looked at. James and I have looked at pouches because of flexible plastics recycling. So rather than reuse, like the recycling of these pouches. And it's something that people like Capri Sun is a pouch, these kinds of things that gets quite a lot of interest from consumers about how green are the credentials of a pouch. So how are you communicating that to your customers? Because I imagine that's something that probably comes up quite a lot.
Yeah, good question. Look, flexible packs, as you know, you guys are the recycling experts, not me. You'll know that the recycling rates for multi-laminate flexible packs is extremely low. I mean, like less than a percentage point. So most of them are shredded, sent to incineration, landfill, bad things, bad outcomes. But as a packaging technology, they're fantastic. They're super resilient. They're lightweight. So again, we go back to James, talking about Loop. Loop were designing these enormously heavy, like high design stainless steel containers. Like no part of that works for the consumer, for the reverse logistics. Flexible packs weigh practically nothing. They're super strong. So our packs are PE, PET, and nylon, and it's the nylon layer which actually gives them that durability, that puncture resistance, and that resilience to be reused multiple times. But yeah, they're not great if they get into the recycling stream because they're very hard to recycle. And people talk about pyrolysis, people talk about all sorts. We work with a specialist recycler in Yorkshire that converts our end-of-life packs into a material called Stormboard, which is then used in construction and infrastructure. So it is kind of end-of-life downcycling, but Stormboard itself can then be recycled 6 more times. So massively extends the life cycle of those polymers in a useful context.
Very weirdly, I've got some of those plastic boards just behind you there. There you go. So yes, I'm it's actually a different brand, but I'm very familiar with the product. So Stormboard are basically taking plastic film, shredding it up, extruding it into a board that can then be used for fencing or advertising material or whatever it is. So it's a replacement for wood, basically.
Yeah, an MDF.
Yeah. So that's great. I was going to ask you what you do with the pouches at the end of their life. It's brilliant. And do you get much customer backlash on it? Or do you think actually customers, because they're coming to you, they sort of know what the product is? Or do you have this kind of, but why, how often do you have to explain yourself that you're using a pouch?
Yeah, sometimes. It's really interesting. We talk about this a lot as a team, that there's so much greenwashing in the reuse and refill space. And you now see brands like Fairy Liquid. Am I allowed to brand highlight?
I think we've established that this podcast just doesn't care. I think Robbie is very happy for us to name brands.
But Fairy Liquid are now delivering their refills effectively in Tetra Pak. And Tetra Pak, as you know, is highly problematic in the waste stream, despite the very bold claims that Tetra Pak can now be effectively recycled all over the country. That's just not the case. I think and I don't want to get into the numbers on this because I'll say something wrong. But
the problem with Tetra Pak, which we have, Robbie and I have penciled in to talk about at some point, but I guess the fundamental problem with it is it's generally replacing something that is widely recycled. So when people move from an HDPE milk bottle, which is entirely HDPE, to Tetra Pak, they are moving from something that almost every council collects, a HDPE milk bottle, has a very strong recycling percentage and it recycles very easily, into a material that is quite hard to recycle. And there's been some amazing studies done that show that people will think that a product is more environmentally friendly if it has cardboard around it. Exactly. And it doesn't matter if you're using the same thing. And I often talk about like toothpaste tubes, where you've got, if you were to randomize and say, which one do you think is greener, this toothpaste tube that's in a cardboard box or this toothpaste tube that's on its own, people will pick the one in the cardboard box because that's the bit they see and they think the cardboard is better. But it's actually got more packaging. It's still the same tube on the inside. And I guess that's the challenge with things like Tetra Pak, where what we see is cardboard, but what is inside can include aluminium and plastic.
Well, always includes aluminium and plastic.
I think the aluminium depends on the product that's on the inside. So it will often include aluminium.
But it has a plastic laminate.
Definitely has a plastic laminate. I think the aluminium is kind of depending on what you've got inside and how sterile you need to keep that. But yes, very few councils, or quite a few councils, collect it. Very few councils then sort it and get it recycled.
Yeah, exactly.
There are very few places for it to be recycled. So we will come on to Tetra Pak. I'd love to get one of those guys on to talk about it, because I think I think they would be quite keen to defend that product, and I think they deserve that opportunity. Yeah, but I can't see how that is a good replacement for a product that is collected by most councils and recycled effectively.
I just think that, and again, I'm conscious I'm in a room with two like A-grade recycling experts.
Where are they?
They actually left about 20 minutes ago before we started recording. But one of our hypotheses is that recycling is broken. It is broken. It is dysfunctional, and you can't wish cycle our way out of this crisis. And we're not ideological about materials, and some customers are. So some customers won't buy Bauer because it is a plastic pouch. But if you look at, we've got 5,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. It's very it's not really a humble brag. That's just an out-and-out brag. But
great sales pitch.
If you could be bothered to read them, you'll see so many of our customers say, I love the fact that I send these packs back and they get used over and over again. That is why I love Bauer. So that is central to our differentiation within the market. So there are, competitors of ours, both at the startup level and at the CPG, big global multinational level, that are using cardboard or with plastic laminate in what we would say is a deeply disingenuous way. What we have an issue with is the linear design systems that have dominated capital markets, and particularly consumer goods, for so many years. This stuff that we use, this packaging, is super intelligent, complex materials, complex polymer bonds, creating strong, resilient, durable. You've got to use them again, because that's what they've been designed for. Last year, globally, we produced 390 million tons of plastic packaging. Over 50% of it was designed to be used once and thrown away. That is just not acceptable.
Yeah, and I guess all of that is true. Just as you were speaking, I was thinking about the reuse potential of your product, and I was thinking, when we talked about Ocado in the reuse episode, we talked about the fact that their bottles are kind of set up to be reused 60 times, which obviously allows them to have a harder, stronger, bigger format. I guess the downside to the pouch, from what you're saying, is that you've got that 36-month limitation, yeah. And actually you're in products that aren't used that frequently. So you're only being reused 10 times, as opposed to if you were doing something that was used on a weekly basis, you could be using it 150 times. What is the opportunity for you guys to take your technology and the business model you've created? And because just to be clear, I think the pouch is great. I'm a big fan of pouches. I think they work really well in this kind of environment where you can reuse them. I guess the opportunity for your technology and what you've created is that you could be in a format that is used more frequently, and therefore you could be reusing way more than 10 times and proving that business model in other ways. Is that something you guys have explored?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And we're actually, we're in conversations with Ocado on a number of levels. And, I'm also good mates with Catherine Conway, who I think is someone you should definitely speak to at some point, who runs Unpackaged and is, worked on the refill trial with Ocado. So I think there's lots of tensions at every angle, right? There's lots of balance points. And, I worry about big, bulky containers, right? Because even though the Ocado cadence is probably more regular because they're probably coming to your house every week, these are big, like 3-litre containers, right? Where are you going to put them? Like if you live in a big house, happy days. If you live in a one bed, like where are you going to put it? And actually we did. So our team went out on the road, literally went on a sort of road trip a couple of weeks ago to do in-home consumer research with some of our long-term subscribers. And one of the really interesting things, we got all these photos of like where people store their packaging. And, if you open the cupboard under anyone's sink, generally in your home, my home, it's pretty full, right? So if you've got like 3 stand-up packs that can pack pretty flat and just slide in neatly to the side of the cupboard, that's like experientially helpful to the consumer. If you've got big, bulky containers, like where are you going to put them? We're constantly trying to innovate and understand the consumer dynamics and how people interact with both product and packaging within the home environment.
And I think it will eventually come down to choice, won't it?
Yeah.
You know, and some people with bigger houses, more space, may choose to have the formats that take up more room. And then others where small space living, etc., where the flat pouch is kind of vital to the customer experience, they'll choose that. I think ultimately that in this, series of podcasts that we're doing, we're exploring refill. This is our 3rd one now on the topic of refill. It's to try and show the plethora of different options. There is no one sort of solution, silver bullet for all of this. There's going to be different solutions for different use cases.
But I slightly swerved James's question. I went off on a bit of a tangent. So to come back to your question, yes, obviously we want to extend the reuse cycles, the longevity of the pack, understand the technical limitations and barriers at a product level, develop the technology further. We're constantly looking to innovate. And look, it may be that the system we have today is not the system we have in 18 months' time, because continuous innovation is the only way to survive in this market. And that's what we've been doing for the last few years. And it may be that around on the next horizon is some radical development or innovation which helps us, deliver reuse and refill to even more homes. So we never stand still with our packaging technology.
Amazing. And Nick, I'm asking every person who gets interviewed by us the same question at the end. So if you could have any superpower to help the environment, what would it be and how would you use it?
So that is a good question, James, because I watch quite a lot of Marvel Universe stuff with my kids. And I did I was toying with this idea of like Plastic Man or something, some sort of, who like what's he called? Doctor Strange,
yeah.
Can sort of levitate across the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and sort of like hover, extrude all of the micro and nanoplastic waste from the ocean and condense it into a sort of tennis ball of plastic energy, which can then be deployed against our mortal enemies, whoever they might be. So I don't know. Is that all right?
Perfectly acceptable answer. Yeah, great. So no, it's not Dr. Plastic. What is it?
Plastic Man?
Plastic Man.
I don't know. We can probably, we get that in the writers' room.
I think we've got to workshop that a little bit. We can do better than Plastic Man.
Yeah, we can get that in the writers' room and kick it around for a few days before we commit to it.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today. I've learned loads. I think it's been brilliant. So I really appreciate you coming in and giving us your time. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. And, I'm a big fan of the podcast, and thank you guys for the opportunity to come and have a chat with you. I've really enjoyed it.
Of course. So just as a reminder, if you want to follow us on social media, we're at Rubbish Podcast. And if you want to get in contact with us with anything we've said, or you just want to talk to me or Robbie, just email us at talkingrubbishpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you, Robbie. Really great to have you all in the room. I will say bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.